I never thought I'd be the guy to catch his wife cheating, especially not after 10 years of marriage. Sarah and I had our ups and downs, sure, but I always believed we had some kind of solid foundation. She was the kind of woman who could be bitchy and dismissive one moment, then sweet and charming the next. But lately, something felt off. It wasn't just the usual bitchy attitude that I'd come to expect from her. It was little things: her phone ringing at odd hours, her brushing off my questions with vague excuses, and her suddenly changing schedule. It all started about 3 months ago when the quarantine measures hit. We were stuck at home, forced into a kind of emotional quarantine ourselves, of sorts. The government kept us apart from everyone else, and that's when I first noticed the weirdness. She'd spend a lot of time on her laptop, more than usual, and sometimes I'd catch her whispering into her phone late at night. I'd ask her what she was doing, and she'd just shrug and say it was work stuff or a friend from her old job. But the real shock came when I started noticing the subtle signs of her behavior changing. She'd be quick to dismiss me, more irritable, and I'd catch her stealing glances at her phone when she thought I wasn't looking. I started noticing her scent on clothes I'd never seen her wear before, like some kind of perfume I didn't recognize. I also found little things like lipstick smudges in unexpected places, and her phone bill showing calls to unknown numbers. I told myself I was overthinking, that maybe she was just stressed or bored, but deep down I knew something was wrong. Then one night I saw it. I was scrolling through her phone while she was in the shower. Stupid, I know, but I was desperate for answers. And there it was. A message popped up from some guy named Jake. "Can't wait to see you again," it read. No freaking way. I stared at it, my heart pounding, trying hard not to lose my mind. She had been lying about everything, hiding this affair right under my nose. I didn't know what to feel first: anger, betrayal, heartbreak. It was like a punch in the gut, and I wasn't sure I'd ever recover from that moment. I kept the phone in my hand, staring at the message. I wanted to confront her immediately, but I also felt this strange coldness creeping in. How long had she been cheating? Was this just a fling or something serious? All I knew was that the woman I married, the woman I loved, or thought I loved, had been playing me for a fool. It was as if the emotional connection we once had been wiped out, replaced by this secret life. I felt abandoned, humiliated, and strangely numb. I didn't sleep that night, just lay there replaying everything in my mind, trying to figure out what I could do next. The next morning I woke up feeling like I'd been hit by a truck. My head was pounding and my stomach was in knots. I knew I had to confront her, but I didn't know how. I was angry, yes, but there was also this deep, aching sadness that I couldn't shake. I kept thinking about all the times I'd trusted her, shared my hopes and fears, believed she was my partner for life. And now I was staring at proof that she had been lying to my face, cheating behind my back. I decided I'd better catch her off guard. If I just asked her straight up, she'd probably deny everything or come up with some bullshit excuse. So I started by casually bringing up how she'd been distant lately, how I felt like we weren't connecting anymore. That was a lie. I wanted her to think I was just as clueless as she thought I was. But inside, I was already planning how I'd confront her, how I'd get her to admit the truth. Later that evening, I was sitting in the living room pretending to watch TV when she came out of the bedroom looking annoyed. She was wearing that same bitchy smirk, like she knew she was the queen of the world. I kept my composure, but my mind was racing. I decided to push her just a little. I asked if she was still working late or seeing friends. She rolled her eyes, leaned on the wall, and said, "You're so paranoid. I don't even know what your problem is lately." That's when I dropped the bomb. I pulled out my phone, showed her the message from Jake. Her eyes widened for a split second, then she immediately started lying. "That's not what it looks like," she said, her voice dripping with contempt. "You're overreacting. Maybe I was talking to a friend, maybe it's nothing. You're just insecure. Honestly, I don't even know why I bother." Her tone was bitchy and dismissive, like I was the one causing all the trouble. She said I was crazy for jumping to conclusions, that I was ruining everything with my accusations. But I wasn't going to back down. I told her I knew she was lying, that I had seen the text myself. That's when she snapped. She started yelling, calling me jealous and obsessive, and then she threw a bunch of accusations back at me. She claimed I was cheating too, said I was probably screwing around on her because I was bored or had some secret life I wasn't telling her about. I was stunned. The woman who claimed to love me was calling me a cheat. That was the last straw. At that point, I felt this mix of rage and despair. I wanted to scream at her, to shake her, to make her understand how deeply she'd hurt me. But I also knew I could keep pretending everything was okay. That night I just sat there staring at the wall, thinking about everything. The betrayal, the lies, the bullshit she kept spewing. It felt surreal, like I was living someone else's nightmare. My mind kept circling back to the question, how long has she been doing this? And what's next? The days that followed were a blur of anger, confusion, and sadness. I couldn't concentrate on anything. Everywhere I looked, I saw her, and every memory we shared seemed tainted now. I kept replaying the confrontation in my mind, trying to figure out her game, her lies, and how I'd been so blind. The worst part was the feeling of helplessness, knowing she was probably out there with Jake, doing who knows what, while I was left holding the pieces of my shattered trust. I started doing some serious thinking about what I wanted to do. At first, I was just angry, so much anger that I was tempted to confront her again, to demand the truth, to yell and scream until she cracked. But deep down, I knew that wouldn't get me anywhere. What I really wanted was to understand, to either save what was left, or to get out cleanly if that's what it came down to. One evening, I decided to do a bit of digging. I installed a simple app on her phone, nothing malicious, just enough to keep an eye on her messages and calls. I didn't want to invade her privacy, but I also needed to see the full picture. That's when I discovered something even more disturbing, her emotional contagion with this Jake guy. She wasn't just texting him casually, she'd been involved in some kind of covert, long-term affair. Most unsettling was how synchronized they'd been during periods meant for emotional distancing, like quarantine, when they weren't supposed to be able to connect. Officially, they should have been apart, isolated, but somehow, they'd been spreading their emotional contagion directly between each other, almost like a virus. That realization hit me hard. It was like a punch in the stomach. She was not just cheating physically, she'd been emotionally entangled in some covert way I never even suspected. I remembered all those nights I'd been trying to be understanding, thinking she was busy with work or overwhelmed by the quarantine, and meanwhile, she was secretly feeding this connection with Jake. It was just about sex. It was about a kind of effective monitoring, a dangerous, unauthorized synchronization. I'd read about this emotional contagion suppression officer, and I swear that's exactly what she'd been doing, trying to control her emotions and distance herself from me, but she was failing. Because in the end, the feelings they shared during that quarantine weren't so easily contained. I sat there, stunned, feeling betrayed on every level. She'd lied, she'd manipulated, and worst of all, she'd been playing some kind of game that I couldn't even understand. I was trying to process the fact that they'd managed to keep this affair hidden for so long, that she'd been able to lie through her teeth even when I had my suspicions. I felt like I was losing my mind. All I could see was the gap widening between us, the trust bleeding out of every conversation, every glance. And yet, I knew I had to do something. The question was, what? Did I confront her again? Did I just leave? Or was there something more I could do to understand what was really happening? The more I looked into her behavior, the clearer it became that this wasn't just about physical cheating. It was about control, emotional suppression, and the chaos that was spreading between us, uncontained and unstoppable. The next step was clear. I had to confront her again, but this time armed with everything I'd uncovered. I didn't want to just yell and accuse blindly. I needed her to admit, to face the truth she'd been so good at hiding. That night I waited until she was home, pretending to be calm, even though inside I was boiling with a mixture of rage and despair. When she came into the room, I held her gaze and said, "We need to talk. I know about Jake. About the emotional affair, the way you've been connecting with him during quarantine. I saw the messages, the calls, everything." Her face instantly twisted into that bitchy smirk, like she thought she could just dismiss everything with some canned excuse. She rolled her eyes, crossed her arms, and snapped, "Oh, please. You've got no proof of anything. You're just being paranoid. You always jump to conclusions." I took a deep breath and laid it all out. How I found the messages, how I saw her emotional synchronization with Jake, how she'd been lying about her whereabouts, her feelings. I told her that I knew she'd been cheating not just physically but emotionally, and that's what hurt the most. Because I'd always believed we shared an emotional connection, that we understood each other. Turns out she'd been hiding a whole other side of herself, one I'd never see coming. Her reaction was classic. She started crying, fake sobs, really, and then she turned it around, blaming me for everything. "You're so insecure," she yelled. "You don't understand what real love is. All I ever wanted was to be happy, and you're just so controlling. Maybe you're the one cheating, huh? Maybe I'm better off without you." The words stung, but I was beyond that. I was past caring whether she called me insecure or a controlling bastard. I just wanted the truth, and I wanted her gone if she didn't want to be honest. She continued her bitchy tirade, insisting she was innocent, that Jake was just someone she'd vented to, that she never meant to hurt me. I didn't buy a word of it. I could see right through her bullshit. Behind that manipulative tone, I knew she was lying. She'd been caught red-handed, and she knew it. She was trying to spin it to make me doubt myself, to make me question whether I was overreacting. But I knew her too well. Her words, her actions, they all pointed to one thing: she'd crossed a line I never expected. I felt something break inside me that night. The anger, the sadness, the sense of betrayal, everything came crashing down at once. I told her I wanted her out of the house, that I couldn't live with her anymore. She looked at me, eyes cold and defiant, and spat, "Fine. Do whatever you want. You'll regret pushing me away." She stormed off, leaving me there, feeling more alone than I ever had in my life. All the trust I once had, gone. And yet, even in that chaos, I knew this was only the beginning. The damage was done, but I needed to understand how deep it went, what I was really dealing with. I couldn't just let her walk away without some kind of reckoning. The emotional contagion, the lies, the manipulation, it all pointed to a bigger picture I was only starting to grasp. And I knew. Somehow, I had to find out what that was before I could even think about moving on. After she left that night, I was left with my thoughts swirling around like a tornado. I sat in the dark, trying to piece everything together. The betrayal ran so much deeper than I'd ever expected. It wasn't just a fling or some stupid affair. It was an emotional game she had been playing during a time when we were supposed to be emotionally distant. She'd been manipulating her feelings, suppressing them, and then clandestinely sharing them with Jake like some kind of covert operation. I remembered the way she used to brush me off when I tried to talk to her about our relationship. The way she'd roll her eyes or dismiss my concerns as overthinking. All the little signs, all the subtle shifts in her behavior. She was hiding something. And now I knew what it was. I had proof, undeniable proof, that she'd been emotionally cheating, performing some kind of effective monitoring with this Jake guy. I'd read about the concept, this suppression of emotions, this unauthorized synchronization. Somehow, during the toughest part of the quarantine, they'd found a way to connect, even when they weren't supposed to. That realization made me feel sick. But what hit me hardest was the fact that she'd lied so effortlessly, lied with that bitchy smile, pretending she was innocent when she was planning her next move. That night, I realized I'd been trying to hold onto a version of us that no longer existed. She had been betraying me in ways I didn't even understand, and yet I had to decide whether I wanted to fight for what was left or cut my losses completely. For days after she left, I was in a state of limbo. I kept going over everything, trying to understand why she did it, what I missed, what I could have done differently. But mostly I was angry, at her, at myself for not seeing it sooner, at the whole damn situation. I knew I had to make a choice: confront her again and demand total honesty, or cut her out of my life entirely. Deep down, I knew I couldn't keep pretending everything was okay, not with what I'd uncovered. Then I decided I needed to dig even deeper, because this wasn't just about her cheating on me physically. It was about the emotional contagion, the suppression, the spread of feelings that were supposed to stay hidden but somehow managed to leak out during those quarantine weeks. I found articles, podcasts, even scientific papers on effective monitoring and emotional synchronization. It was almost like she'd been part of some clandestine operation, covertly sharing feelings with Jake that she wouldn't admit to me. I saw how dangerous this stuff could be, how it could tear apart relationships, manipulate feelings, and create chaos while everyone was supposed to be isolated. I knew I couldn't keep pretending I didn't see what was going on. I decided I would use this knowledge to either get her back, if she was willing to admit everything and be honest, or to finally walk away. I couldn't live with a betrayal like this hanging over me. I had to face the reality that I was dealing with someone who had been manipulating her emotions, who was capable of deception on a level I'd never expected. The emotional contagion suppression officer, that's what I'd call her now, and honestly, I felt like I'd been caught in some kind of emotional epidemic I couldn't control. I was just trying to breathe, trying to figure out if I could even trust myself again after all this chaos. The truth finally hit me like a ton of bricks, that she had been orchestrating this entire emotional contagion with Jake during the quarantine, intentionally or not, and I'd been blind to it the whole time. The betrayal cut deeper than any physical affair ever could. It wasn't just about her sleeping with someone else. It was about the manipulation, the sneaky influence over feelings that shouldn't have been shared outside of genuine connection. I could see now how her attempt to control her emotions, to distance herself, was just a cover-up for the real chaos inside her, the chaos she'd willingly shared with Jake, the very chaos I was supposed to be clueless about. After everything, I decided I couldn't stay in the same house. I packed up my things, told her she could stay or leave, but I wasn't going to be a part of whatever twisted game she was playing anymore. I told her I'd rather be alone than live with someone who manipulated feelings, lied, and betrayed me so blatantly. She screamed, called me jealous, insecure, controlling, everything she'd spewed during our last fight, but I didn't care. Her words were meaningless now. I'd seen her true face, and I'd accepted that she was someone I didn't know anymore. In the days that followed, I reflected on everything I'd learned. The concept of emotional contagion and suppression isn't just some scientific theory, it's a dangerous tool in the wrong hands. She had been acting as an effective monitoring officer, trying to suppress her feelings, maybe to avoid confronting her own weaknesses. But instead of confronting what she was feeling, she had hidden behind lies and manipulation. And in doing so, she'd spread chaos between us, infecting our relationship with her secret affair, and leaving me emotionally drained and betrayed. I've learned a few things from all this. First, trust is fragile, so fragile that it can shatter with just one lie. Second, people are capable of hiding so much more than you realize, especially when they're skilled at masking their true feelings. And third, sometimes the only way to heal is to accept that some relationships are beyond repair, especially when betrayal is this deep. I don't regret discovering the truth, even if it's painful. Ignorance might feel safe, but it's a false security. I'm better off knowing, even if it hurts. So now, I'm rebuilding my life piece by piece. I realize I need to be more aware of the subtle signs, those tiny signals that someone might be hiding something. I'm also more cautious about who I trust with my emotions. And I've come to understand that emotional manipulation, whether in quarantine or normal times, is a real threat. It can spread silently, infecting relationships in ways you never see coming until it's too late. To anyone out there feeling the same suspicion, my advice is simple: don't ignore the signs. Dig deeper. Be honest with yourself and your partner. Because once trust is broken, rebuilding it is a long, hard road. But it's worth it. Trust is the foundation of everything. And if that's gone, then all you're left with is the chaos of a relationship infected by lies.